Mack is a father of three, and he has a beautiful family. And they're on their last vacation of summer, and his younger daughter is abducted and dies. And that tremendous loss makes him spiral, and he loses himself, and he basically loses his place in his family because he's suffering a tremendous amount of grief. But he receives this letter in his mailbox, and he has to, think about whether or not it's from God or the person that abducted his daughter. But it's an invitation to the shack to talk about things. And he has to make a decision on whether or not he's going to go and see who wrote that letter. And it turns out that it is an invitation from the character that I play, Papa. I wanted to be a part of the project because I was given the book by a friend, and I was told that it had a lot of forensic and thriller aspects, but that there was a surprise. And I thought, okay. So I thought I was going to be reading something very different from the life lesson that I was bound to get from the shack. And I couldn't imagine not taking this journey. I mean, it's been a beautiful journey. I play Papa, AKA God. And God is very much a mom to Mack. She is pure love and wisdom, and basically just tries to impart that to him because he's at a very trying stage in his life and in his faith, and he's trying to reconcile that grief and resolve it. And he's angry. He has lost someone very precious to him, and he's suffered tremendous losses in his life. So he's taken a huge step away from his faith. And it's only when he walks back and asks those questions and confronts those issues in the shack that he's able to find that redemption and, fill that hole that he has created that the loss has created within him. When you see this film, I think the way that it's being shot is going to be mesmerizing. I every time I walk onto a different set, my heart just bursts with pride. I think the story itself is one that people will be able to see themselves in, and will gain the life lessons. I think it will be catharsis or cathartic in nature for some people. It was and has been for me. I have been on a journey with this one, but it's one that I am glad that I am able to accept and take at this stage of my life. For me, I know there's never been anything that has made me lose my faith in God. And I'm very grateful for that. But I have experienced loss in my life. Now, there have been instances where I've lost faith in myself, and the thing that brings you back to yourself is your faith in God. So I understood Mack's journey in a lot of ways, but I had this empathy for that character because he represents every man. And I don't know, there was something about this project that I feel the world needs. It's a balm. I know that it just created this calm for me in my life, and the lesson, and there's just so much light around it. I think people will be very excited about the message, the imagery, the wisdom, and the love that this film is going to put out into the world. At least I'm excited about that. So I think people will be excited about that too.
first time that I read it, it was so hard for me. As a father, it was so hard for me. And I'm a Gemini, you know, we're very sensitive. So it was hard. I remember that the moment that I finished the script, you know, I sit, it was at night, my wife sit in the living room, she watched TV, I read the script. In the last scene, you know, everything is exploded. I just started to cry, and it is a hard story, you know. Yeah. So this is the thing. This is what happened to me when I read it. It was hard, but positive. To be part of this story, you know, it's amazing to play someone who can touch so many people. That's why I'm an actor, you know. I'm an actor because I want to touch people, and I want to tell stories, and I want to tell good stories. This is a big privilege for me. The lesson of Jesus teaching Mack is to understand that everything is in his hands. This is the thing. His choices, you know, he can choose live in darkness, live in the light.
Mackenzie is on a camping trip inside the joy of family and relationship. His youngest daughter is abducted, and evidence is found at a shack out in the Oregon wilderness that she may have been murdered. And 4 years later, in the midst of his great sadness, where a lot of times those kind of losses then begin to dismantle the relationships around you as well. And he gets a strange invitation back to the shack. And that invitation is couched in a way that it could be the perpetrator, or it could be somebody with a very sick sense of humor, or it could be an invitation by God. And he goes back to the shack to face his hurt and brokenness, and with all of his fury and all of his anger and all of his rage, which is part of our humanity. The underlying meta narrative that is like, you know what? In order to come to healing, you've got to go back to the places that you were broken. You can't go around it. You can't ignore it, but you can't do it alone either. And that wraps itself inside issues and questions of faith, issues and questions of relationship, and willingness to face your own broken heart. This storyline is built around losses, and it is the one thing that we have in common as human beings. It's not our politics, it's not our ethnicity, it's not our social status, it's not our economics, it's losses. We share that in common. And once we begin to allow for that conversation to emerge, there's real chance for some changes in the way that we relate to ourselves, let alone to each other. One of the beautiful pictures that's in the Psalms is that the Holy Spirit collects our tears. And in the movie, in the book, SARAYU, the Holy Spirit, collects tears. And then those tears become part of the reconciliation, grieving process, and out of it comes a new tree of life. But what it did for people, it gave them permission to grieve, that my tears actually matter, you know, that if nobody else saw them, maybe God saw them. And that becomes a beautiful point of connection. And the part of the heart of the artists that are working on this film is to capture, not just capture it, but to open up that space so that people can experience their own sadness. And we've had the losses in our family, some really devastating losses, but the other layer is, yes, this goes back to my own shack. It's the place of devastation on the inside, the house that we all build, and some of us didn't get good help, right? And so that's the place we then store our addictions and hide our secrets. we don't ever want anybody in there because we're terrified they will hate us as much as we already do.
This man who's hurting, who's had a tough life, a tough childhood, things that I could have never imagined going through. But after he finds himself and finds God and really, you know, gets back to reality, I think it shows you that anybody can do that. Anybody can be healed. Anybody can help themselves and get help, you know. And that's just like a very simple message, I think, that, or one of the simple messages that this story has, and it's got so many beautiful, you know, underlying morals and messages within as well. Everybody has gone through tragedies and loss, and you know, it really, I think, will bring people together, closer together, because of the fact that loss and tragedy can sometimes make you think that it's the evil of the world, the bad of the world. And this is a really big part of what SARAYU brings to Mack's life. And the message she wants to portray to him is that, you know, life is beautiful and this world is beautiful, and you know, there is going to be loss, there's going to be tragedy, there's going to be the bad, or what you think is the bad. But what everybody says is bad is going to be different. What everybody says is evil is going to be different. And you know, my tragedy can be more sad than your tragedy, but this bad in the world can bring the good and can bring people together. And I think that's also a beautiful part that people can definitely do. They can talk about this film, talk about the book, and really, you know, bring ideas together, and it really will bring the world together, I think. I hope. I had never experienced anything like it. I'd never read a book so pure and so simple, yet so moving, and you know, it got so deep into my gut, if that makes sense, that I was just astounded, and I said, I love this story. I hope that I can be a part of this film. Sam is a genius. I love seeing what he does. Every take is just, ugh, I just want to, you know, I want to be him. I wish I had his talent. I'm just trying to soak it all in and learn from him, and he's just so present, so there, and has so many different ideas, and it's just so clear in his head. And if he doesn't, you know, feel that it's right, he'll go back and do it again and bring 150% every single time on set.
When I read the script, I was very curious to get to the end. And I think that's the best thing when you're reading a script, when you're like, you can't stop reading just to figure out or to try to understand what is his journey. And I thought it was very interesting how much deeper and deeper you go, but at the same lighter and lighter you get when you're watching the film. Everything is a challenge, but you look deep inside. And I felt that when I was reading the script and trying to visualize how they would put this on camera. And I think through Mack's journey, I experienced, I think, like with the book, with the script, the same thing of really thinking about life and really thinking about loss and really thinking about, you know, these journeys that every human being goes through. So when I read the script, all those questions and thoughts resonated on me. My role is Sophia, and she's wisdom. I love saying that because I've never played a character like her. And I truly love the scene. When I read the scene, I was really curious to see how you can talk about judgment and God and life and all those subjects without becoming preaching or becoming wisdom. Something that I always felt it should be grounded, more human, like more connected to him as an equal, and just leading him into the understanding of why he needed to change or to understand what was happening inside him for him to break through and breathe again and be free again, in the sense of letting it go, the past, and understanding that life goes on even if you have a horrible loss, and all those little details that everyone goes in life. I feel that the film brings a lot of the discussions about judgment, about life, about loss, about love and care and hate. And that's a common feeling for everybody in the world. And I feel that the movie brings that. It brings in a different way of just being a religious film. And that's very important because many people can connect with it. And I truly hope, you know, the audience will get curious about it, to either learn something or to get curious about something.
There's a guy who has had a difficult childhood. He's kind of found a way to patch his life together, and he's got a really lovely family. There's a little bit of unfigured out stuff that he has in the back of his mind, and then something terrible happens to the family and they lose one of the children. And they, despite their faith and religious kind of beliefs, they don't really know how to cope with that. They don't really have the tools to cope with the experience, and their family's starting to kind of fall apart. And then he has this, either it's a hallucination or a dream or an experience where he has this long conversation with God. And in that conversation, he is able to sort of analyze his experience as a person and his experience as a part of, the universe. And he comes back with some sort of realization and some sense of peace, and that resonates with all the people that are close to him. I guess I read the script and thought this is a really charming, simple, but very profound tale. And I really like the cast. I think Sam's a great actor, and OCTAVIA. So primarily it was just reading the script and sort of understanding who was associated to the project. And I was like, I want to be part of that. Nan also struggles with the situation, but I think she's a strong character in the sense that she is going to keep her family going. She's not going to give up, and she doesn't give up, and she doesn't give up on her kids. She doesn't give up on him, even though he's in this sort of very dark and depressive state. She still is very supportive of him and compassionate, and I think patient. So I don't think she's sort of resolved and at peace herself, but she hasn't given up on the future at all. Mr. Worthington. He brings a very raw, it sounds intense, but kind of masculinity to the character, which I think is great for the role. And there's nothing saccharine about him. He's very much a man's man. And he's a really great actor, so I think he's perfectly cast in his part. Tim is just like a magnet of charm, and you can just see the extras all fluttering around him whenever he walks into the room. And he's also going to be the voiceover for the story, and he's got that great accent. I think he's really comforting. He's got a really comforting presence, and I think it's perfect for that role.
The story essentially is about a man whose daughter is taken away from him. His daughter's murdered, and that propels him to a deep depression and a deep resentment towards faith in life, faith in himself, and this ripple effect, faith in his family. And then gets the opportunity to meet God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost, and question why this happened, and go through the kind of penance, for want of a better word, to find a release, to find a way through. It's a story about forgiveness. It's a story about not only does this man have to forgive God for taking away, for who he blames, allowed this to happen, allowed this tragedy to happen, but he has to forgive the person that did this, which in itself is something that is unimaginable, and in return face the demons of his own past. He had a very violent upbringing, a very abusive upbringing, so he has to forgive his past, and then in turn forgive the present and how he's feeling, and forgive himself. And that kind of, those four tests are extremely difficult for anyone to face up to, but in order to kind of be released and journey on through life, that's what he has to go through. I had a visceral reaction to the script, and that's always good. I'd rather, you can read things and intellectually like the plot. This, I emotionally attached myself to it because, I have a young family, and I identified with what would happen if part of that family was taken away from me. And then when you kind of, the exploration of what he goes through with Papa and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, it's kind of like, I've had those arguments. So, I wanted to kind of go into that world and try to question it and use the material almost in a cathartic way for myself. It's, this is a way in a movie a bit like going to a psychotherapist, except the psychotherapist happens to be God. And I kind of thought these questions that you never are going to get the opportunity to get answered in real life, this is a character that actually gets the opportunity to ask this question and get them answered in some respect, even if he doesn't fully understand or like the answers. And that intrigued me. At the shack he meets God, Jesus, and SARAYU, who is the spirit of this Holy Trinity. And they are all one, and they are one being of God, but they're different facets of what God is and what God can represent and how we see God or how we feel God. And I think it's, this is where the movie kind of twists a bit, in the sense of, A, it's highly unusual, and B, I think that it's, sets Mack on this journey of a quest, an inner quest, an emotional inner quest. Even though he's performing these kind of journeys with each one of them in order to unravel, feelings and thoughts about how he has to go forward, I think it also kind of is about a deepening of bringing out all the hatred and evil and hurt and pain and letting go of that. And thanks to these three people, that's what happens. Here's a movie where it kind of, you'll hopefully sit back at home and try to go, well, it was very beautiful and it was epic, and there was some, it was larger than life. But to be honest, I can actually do these things in my own life. I can actually start to forgive people I don't like, and I can actually find an ease and a breath and a calm in my own life to go forward. That's extremely rare. I don't know why we don't see that a lot more. That to me is great filmmaking. If it sticks with you longer than it takes for you to cross the lobby. I read the script, and then that compelled me to read the book. And I liked the fact that the story could connect to you, even if you weren't religious or you weren't spiritual. I think there were still ideas and arguments that were proposed in the book and the script that we deal with every day, or have thought about at least in our lifetime. And I think just to go on that journey of exploration, I thought would be a challenge. A lot of bad stuff happens to us in our lives, and we tend to hold on to those backpacks of hatred and backpacks of pain, and that is the shack. The shack is a metaphor for all the pain, all the hurt, all the kind of anti-feelings that we feel, and we build these and we live in them. And the whole point of this is we're trying to disband the shack. The shack gets rid of through forgiveness, through understanding, through caring about others.
Mack, his daughter is in a terrible situation. Mack takes his family out, and something terrible happens to his daughter, and he sort of loses his way. Willie, in my perspective, he's sort of telling Mack's story from a sort of a third person point of view. He's represents the audience in most ways. And he's telling Mack's story, and he's telling the story of what happens to Mack and what happens to his family, what happens to his daughter, and how Mack sort of goes down a sort of a black hole trying to figure his life out, and what's the meaning of why he's here, what's the meaning of God, what's the meaning of faith, what's the meaning of forgiveness, redemption, moving forward in your life, taking care of your family, all those things. And Willie's really there to just sort of be just a huge support for him, and that's what my character does. He sort of offers a lot of support for Mack and his family. He helps Mack sort of find his way and understand that there's more to just wallowing around in what he's dealing with. I cried when I read the script. I have 3 daughters, and it doesn't matter if you have kids or don't have kids, or daughters or sons or whatever. You read something like that, and the power that it has on someone's life. It's pretty dramatic. And then to see the arc of how their world sort of changes and how they come back around and sort of find themselves again and find the strength to go on and find the strength to be there for their family. It's a pretty remarkable story. First off, the book, of course. When I talked a little bit about this project's around and what people think about it, and so many friends and family just pointed out how it changed the way they thought about life, and changed the way they thought about other people, and it changed the way they thought about forgiveness and redemption and all the qualities that this book has and all the things that this book talks about. And then Gil Netter was involved, who's been a friend of mine for a long time. I mean, one of my very first movies I worked with Gil was Flicka. And so then fast forward to Blindside, working with Gil. So when Gil called and wanted me to be involved with it, I mean, it was just a matter of finding the scheduling. Gil was very good at really sort of looking at my schedule and seeing what worked. And then, of course, Sam Worthington, Octavia Spencer, and all the people who were involved with it were just spectacular actors. I think in our day and age that people can say I'm sorry a lot, but I don't know that people really understand what that really means to someone, and what the truth behind saying I'm sorry really means to someone, or saying I accept your forgiveness. And I think that's almost more important than forgiving someone, is accepting their forgiveness when someone does forgive you. We want to stomp our feet and we want to point fingers so much today that we forget what we're here for and what our purpose is to love one another and sort of be supportive of one another and find ways to lift each other up. And I think that's why this movie's going to really resonate.